increasing use of wireless and aeroplanes has decreased the distance in time around the Earth. But any country, no matter how rough and wild, must have roads to enable it to develop. In 1942, a highway was finished which opened up vast areas in northwest Canada. It begins at milepost 0, which is in the center of the town of Dawson Creek, Alberta, and ends in Fairbanks, Alaska. This milepost in Dawson Creek is the first of many on the Alaska Highway, a road over 1,500 miles long. Leaving Dawson City, it passes rows of large granaries wherein are stored the products of the surrounding country. This area has been developed by the government under a settlement scheme and contains some very beautiful and fertile farmlands. However, as we are motorists, we'll be thankful for the produce of such land and head away up the road. All designs of nature are beautiful, and it is usually man that makes them ugly. However, to disprove this, we have the bridge which crosses the Kiskatina River. Made entirely of wood, it is a lovely example of efficient craftsmanship. Up a hill and round a corner, we are confronted with a wonderful panorama, the valley of the Peace River. Long ago, this mighty river was used by the voyagers of the Hudson Bay Company, who brought out millions of dollars worth of furs and merchandise from the trappers and Indians. It is now spanned by a magnificent suspension bridge, which cost $4 million to build. Across undulating country covered with trees, the road appears to be just a gash in the Earth's surface, a gash along which great lorries carry merchandise. Through the dust, and once again the road climbs, only to dip suddenly into a ravine with fierce running water at the bottom. Dropping sharply down with a steep cliff on one side and a wall of towering rock on the other, the road is carried across a beautiful waterway by the Sicannie Chief Bridge. Leaving this charming spot, with its romantic name, we are soon heading upwards to the foothills which lead to the summit of Trutch Mountain, the second highest point on the highway. As to be expected, once at the top, we are rewarded by some magnificent scenery. Standing on the edge of a precipice, the valley stretches away into the haze of far-off horizons, with the distant mountains looking like small hills. Down below, the valley is laid out like a carpet, with the trees resembling moss on a hillside. In days gone by, this was the home of the moose and bear and the haunt of hunting tribes of redskins. Today, the animals are scarce, while the Indians are few and far between, living the life of nomads. Although some still live in teepees, this is the only connection with the romantic Indian of legend. No doubt in films and books they will live on, their past glamorized, their present a life of obscurity. By nature, they're curious, and were very interested in the cars which keep appearing in these pictures. These, by the way, are Morris Minors. Produced by the Nuffield organization, they are one of the world's smallest cars, but are also among the world's sturdiest travelers. Here they are, entering a picturesque wayside petrol station. They don't have to do this often because of their amazing economy. But these log-built huts and the welcome, including apple pie, to be found inside, makes a stop, even for petrol, something to look forward to. And so, with a comfortable feeling in our tummy and a full tank, we head into country growing more wild and beautiful as the miles roll on. Soon we are on the banks of the lovely Musquoa River. With its romantic name, which is Indian for bear, and its thickly wooded banks, it is easy to lapse in thought into the past. The past when scantily clad Indians with bows and arrows obtained their food and clothing from the animals which roamed here. However, Probably influenced by the local beauty, the road engineers have built a bridge across this lovely river in keeping with its surroundings. The Muskwa River Bridge is incidentally the lowest point in elevation on the Alaskan Highway. Passing over this bridge, the road is enveloped in a country heavy with the scent of wild flowers and foliage, in which multi-hued butterflies disport themselves, often being caught in the dust storm of passing cars and lorries. At times, the highway bypasses an ancient settlement and a new one springs up adjacent to the road. This is the case with Fort Nelson, where the original village, built in 1800, has been replaced by a modern, up-to-date settlement. Leaving Fort Nelson, the highway enters an extremely wild and hilly section of the North Canadian Rockies, through which it winds for over 200 miles. Purring along, the miners are soon making light of the 14-mile climb, which leads around the top of Steamboat Mountain. This is so named, probably by an old prospector with nostalgic memories, because of a fancied resemblance to a steamboat. The road here wanders in densely wooded country close to the skyline, giving the travelers some idea of the enormous difficulties that had to be surmounted when this road was cut. There are, however, compensations for the motorist in the many vistas of surprising grandeur that appear like the ever-opening pages of a picture book. Slow-running rivers meander through a maze of mountains, looking like streams of quicksilver, twisting and turning in aimless wanderings. From the tops of mountains, down ledges on the far side, this road leads on. Mile after mile of changing scenery, but always more of the road ahead. As fast as the wheels go round, so the road seems to pass faster under them. So efficient is the torsion bar suspension on these miners that the road could be a roll of white silk ever unrolling in front. Climbing steadily up a ledge overlooking a trickling stream, it is difficult to realize that this stream, lazily wending its way among rocks and boulders, will in a month or two be a roaring torrent, fed from the snows on the surrounding mountains, which stand so majestically in the background. Once over the hill, we are confronted with a magnificent expanse of water. This is Summit Lake, and the road skirting its edge hugs the side for miles. Occasionally, the road has been hewn around the base of a mountain and is overhung by high cliffs, which to the driver of a car often look very ominous. Actually, these roadside cliffs are a problem to the maintenance engineers, as they often collapse and the resulting landslide completely blocks the road. In this case, travelers have to wait patiently until a bulldozer can be sent to the scene, and they can then follow in its tracks, keeping a wary eye for any large rocks left on the road. Because after all, you're a long way from a service station. The names by which the various places are known are often very romantic and often quite applicable. But what about Toad River? Did someone see just one toad, or were there hundreds of toads? Or, as often in these lonely places, did someone see a likeness in one of the surrounding mountains? Whatever the origin of the name, the place is very enchanting, and before the road was cut, must have been very, very far from the madding crowd. Well, toads or no toads, the highway calls us on. And so, with a rhythmic burst as we change gear, our cars swing round a sharp corner, gleefully hugging the road as they demonstrate one of the features of these amazing mites. Once again, we are winding in and out along the shore of another lake, this time Lake Muncho. In places, the road twists and turns back on itself so much that the cars appear to be playing hide and seek. Snuggled in a nest of mountains, the lake is a lovely example of nature's handiwork. At times, the majesty of the scenery is accentuated by the great silence which surrounds the traveler. Only the sound of rushing water and the call of an occasional bird breaks a silence in which nature has painted some of her most charming pictures. Scintillating in the sun's rays, these mountain rivers rush on, getting smaller during their brief summer months and freezing up in the winter. With the return of spring, the snows on the surrounding mountains melt and transform them again into cascading rivers. Where there are mountains, there are often valleys of great beauty. The Liard River Valley is no exception, with the road snaking through the center. Here again, everything man-made is dwarfed by the size and majesty of the scenery that surrounds this valley. On either side, dry river beds lead down from the mountains, waiting for the torrents, which will eventually pour through when the snow melts. With so many rivers to be crossed, it is not surprising to find bridges of every type and construction. The Liard Suspension Bridge is an outstanding example, while the road across appears to be suspended on threads. We wonder what the Redskins of the past would think if they could see this graceful structure crossing the river they knew so well. At times, the road can become monotonous as mile follows mile, and passing lorries turn day into twilight. It is therefore a very pleasant change when one finds that by a slight digression, a diversion like the Whirlpool Canyon Rapids can be seen. Here, a few islands in the middle of the Liard River convert the waters into foaming rapids. However, regretting that we have no fishing tackle, we leave this enchanting spot to face once again the road which demands so much from our car. Here, the side of a hill has been cut away, and only a ledge overlooking a precipice is left to travel on. Such motoring requires a first-class car and implicit trust in its design. As a matter of fact, the miners, with their powerful engines and hydraulic brakes, inspire their owners with complete go-anywhere confidence. Talking of confidence brings us to Contact Creek, a point in the road which was the culmination of much confidence, and is now a spot of historical significance. Here it was that the road-building crews from the north met the working bands from the south, thus completing over 1,500 miles of the Alaskan Highway in 7 months, a stupendous effort. The sign erected on the bridge tells the story of this momentous meeting. All main roads ultimately attract travelers, and travelers have to be accommodated. So, however great the difficulties, hotels will in time spring up all along the route. Those on the highway vary from the picturesque log building type with almost every convenience to the converted army hut. This, however, is to be expected on a road that only a few years previous was virgin country. Just outside Watson Lake is a rapidly decaying relic. During the highway building days, a multiple signpost was erected. Originally indicating places on the actual highway, names from the other side of the world have since been added, indicating that somebody from there has passed through. It's rather amusing that, as there is only one road, all the signs point in one direction. At times, the scenery is strongly reminiscent of Switzerland, with rugged mountains towering above little lakes, the road winding this way and that, always trying to find the easiest way round or over. Like some rapidly moving kaleidoscope, the scene changes from mountains to flat valley, from flat valley to swift-running rivers, from rivers to more bridges, and as the road rises again, deep cuttings appear. In places, this road has been built up, and notices along the side warn motorists that there are soft shoulders. These notices have to be respected, otherwise speeding on corners can spell disaster for the finest vehicle. With only the sound of our lion-hearted engine, the road unrolls before us, mile after mile, mile after mile through wooded country, until once again we burst out into the open, only to find yet another river and yet another bridge. This time, it is at Nisultin, and here we find the longest wooden bridge on the highway. 2,300 feet long, it crosses the edge of Testlin Lake and leads into and through picturesque Testlin village. In 1950, a side road was opened up off the actual highway and leads to the village of Atlin. This is well worth a visit, if only for the scenery en route. Skirting the shore of Lake Como, with its background of mountains, the road winds along and over shoulders of rocky hills that slope away to the shores of Little Atlin Lake. Atlin itself is a quaint little village dating from the gold rush days of 1900. Before the opening of the road, its only approach was by water from Carcross, across Tagish and Atlin lakes. The background of snow-clad Mount Atlin, draped in floating wisps of clouds, with some of the old lake steamers in the foreground, make a picture that is not easy to forget. After Atlin, a stop for refreshments at a typical highway hunting lodge, with its varnished pine construction, a building solid and cozy enough to defy the severest winter. On again, with occasional fleeting glimpses of moose and bear in the surrounding woods, we rapidly approach the mighty Yukon River system. This is the first approach to this river, and on breasting a hill, we see far below the Yukon River Dam, the only one on the Yukon. This was built in 1923 to aid the navigation of the river at low water after the breakup of ice in the spring. It is built entirely of wood and is 400 feet long. Continuing on rapidly rising ground, with the road just a ledge overlooking a deep ravine, we can soon hear the distant sound of rushing water. And then, far below in a luxuriously wooded valley, we see the White Horse Rapids roaming through Miles Canyon. Here, suspended on a tiny wooden bridge, the Robert Lowe Suspension Bridge, the fierce rush of the waters can be seen as they pass below. One cannot but admire the courage of the old gold miners who, in their frail, overloaded boats and canoes, passed through here on their way to the Klondike gold mines. This seething waterway, rushing along between high cliffs, gradually passes into flatter country and eventually comes to the town of Whitehorse. This frontier town was made the capital of the Yukon in 1951, the former capital being Dawson City. A fascinating town, it boasts a narrow gauge railway connecting it with Carcross and Skagway and a line of river steamers. These are extremely picturesque, being the early sternwheeler type, and connect the town with the old capital, Dawson City. Whitehorse, like Dawson City, knew Robert W. Service and his wonderful poems of the Northwest. Here is the actual cabin that Sam McGee lived in. One cannot visit Whitehorse without feeling the call of the past. The stories of Service, London and others easily materialize, and one's thoughts fill with memories of gold rushes that now only live in novels. Yes, when leaving Whitehorse, you feel that you've lived in an era that formerly you thought was only possible in books. Any story of the Northwest is almost certain to include Indians, and although today much of their romance is gone, some of their settlements still exist, like this one at Champaign, which was here long before the highway was built. Nearby is their burial ground, where, in keeping with Indian custom, little houses only 3 feet high are built over the graves. These are the homes of the dead ones, until their spirit is admitted to the happy hunting grounds. Once again, the open road, and with foot hard down and the thrill of 60 miles an hour, we rapidly approach a range of snow-capped mountains. Here, the air becomes clearer and a sharpness is notable. High in the mountain tops, huge glaciers poised. When the sun is shining, they scintillate like a rainbow, and the icicles resemble a box of multicolored jewels. Through a bleak, almost barren country, with the clouds hanging like streaks of cotton wool below the tops of the mountains, we push on, leaving the ever-present trail of dust behind us. This dust is a menace on the highway, and woe betide any car that does not possess good dust-proofing or that has an inefficiently protected engine. Pulling superbly, our cars head for one of the highest points on the highway, the Boutillier summit, and losing themselves in a cloud of dust, continue onto the road, which can be seen pointing towards the distant horizon. The valley which lies below, and through which we have to pass, is clothed with dense forests, and is the home of numerous wild animals. Where the road passes through these forests, man's industry is apparent, and petrol stations are found situated in picturesque clearings. And although averaging over 40 miles per gallon, we take this opportunity of refilling our tanks. In these wild parts, surrounded as they are by forests and mountains, it is a common occurrence to find a bear like this chap nosing around the garbage bins at your back door. Although wild, they do not seem antagonistic to man, though no doubt this attitude depends on how hungry they are. Traveling on this road brings a series of surprises. The bridge over Slims River is one. There's always a wind blowing across this bridge, and as the sandbanks in the river dry out, so a continual stream of dust is picked up and blown into the air, converting the area into a veritable dust bowl. Here, at Soldiers Summit, in the bitter cold of November 1942, the road, which originally passed over the top, was officially declared open. Thus, with Soldiers Summit behind them, the miners, their presence made obvious by the inevitable spume of dust, are soon traveling the road which skirts the edge of Lake Cluin. The road here follows the lakeside for many miles and comprises several short, sharp rises and innumerable twists and turns. Lovely views across the lake pass before the eyes of the motorists in an ever-moving panorama, often only to be immediately erased by dust from a passing lorry. Road making through virgin country brought difficulties of every type. One of the most formidable was crossing the shallow waterways like the Donjek River. The bottomless slime of these shallow rivers was particularly trying, and men and equipment often wallowed in a sea of mud. Short distances can bring amazing changes on this wonderful road. Standing on the bridge crossing the White River, with the road climbing up the steep bank, one is confronted by a vista of flat waterways. This is only interesting because the water is almost white from the volcanic ash and silt washed down from the distant Wrangell Range in Alaska. But now turn round, and this is the view from the other side of the bridge. A beautiful picture in striking contrast. So far, we've traveled in Canada, but now we cross the boundary into American territory. A rustic signpost informs the traveler when he is entering Alaska, while the actual boundary is marked by a wide slash cut through the forests and extending across country for over 700 miles. In the lower lying country, on quiet lakes and backwaters, the work of beavers can often be seen. These amazing creatures cut and collect huge quantities of sticks and build a dam across a rivulet. Having stemmed the flow of water, they proceed to build a home, which they do with the aid of further vast quantities of sticks held together with mud. If one maintains silence, these industrious creatures can often be seen swimming around collecting sticks either for food or house repairs. If alarmed, however, they slap the water with their tails as a warning and disappear immediately beneath the surface. Where there are beavers, there must be water. And where there is water, there must be bridges. So once again, we find our cars crossing another bridge, this time the Tanana River Bridge, a fine example of the cantilever truss type. We are now rapidly approaching Tok Junction, a rendezvous for enormous lorries, and also the office of the American Customs. Here, with great civility and very little waste of time, the customs officers examined our credentials and passports, and we were duly allowed to proceed on our way. During the construction of this road, no fewer than 500 rivers and streams were bridged, so it's not surprising that once again we find ourselves crossing yet another river. This one is the Big Gerstle River, which shows every evidence of heavy flooding in the spring. What, no dust? In this area, with a wonderful background of snow-capped mountains, the government are endeavoring to re-establish the decimated buffalo herds. While they're increasing yearly, they still remain very elusive, certainly out of camera range. Hereabouts, the country generally is flat, and the highway once again crosses yet another river. The rivers here are sluggish and shallow, and the merging of the multiple channels of the Delta River with the Tanana River cover the countryside with slow-moving waterways and a series of small islands. This network of waterways continues for several miles, and during the spring breakup, much of this area is completely flooded. Again, the dusty road. Running parallel with this waterway, we head for Fairbanks and are soon entering a region famed in gold mining history. Here we pause to look at a statue recently erected to one Felix Pedro, the man who first discovered gold in the Fairbanks area. This man, by a chance discovery in 1902, brought riches to a few and hope, often followed by poverty and hardship, to thousands. We are now in a rolling country, a country of romantic story, and places like Klondike, Dawson City and the Chilkoot Pass are frequently mentioned in conversation. These are, of course, the high spots in the colorful gold rush days of '98 and thereabouts. Occasionally, one is hurled into the past by the sight of an old-timer on the banks of a creek, still panning for gold in the old-fashioned way. From morn till night, they dig and wash, slowly extracting from the earth the precious yellow grains for which so many men have sweated, toiled and died. Nowadays, man is replaced by mechanization, and the valleys are dotted with large dredgers like this. These machines are built up on the site and slowly propel themselves forward, scooping up the bowels of the earth, extracting the gold, and throwing up a waste of stones and gravel in their path. In lovely valleys, where only a few gold miners' huts existed, the creeks running through the bottom are now torn up and left in a state of desolation. From thoughts of gold, we turn to the golden heart of Alaska, Fairbanks, and soon we enter its main street. The discovery of gold made Fairbanks a boom town, and although government installations have accelerated its growth, the glittering stuff that originally brought Alaska into the public eye, gold, remains its mainstay. A boom town grows like a mushroom, and Fairbanks has every evidence of such growth. Small wooden-built houses abound, while humanity from the four corners of the earth rub shoulders in the streets. There is, however, a solid core of development, and no doubt in years to come, Fairbanks will be one of the most foremost towns in Alaska. Although Fairbanks is the end of our journey on the highway, let's cross our last bridge and, in imagination, continue on this road to who knows where. Against terrific odds, it cut its way, opening up new countries for commerce and fresh opportunities for the owners of Morris cars. Now vibrating with the largest lorries in the world, we wonder, can this road go further? Will its streams of merchandise open up the Arctic like it has opened up the Northwest? Or will nature's icy barriers hold on to her own? One thing is certain, wherever these huge lorries lay a dusty trail, you can be sure the cars with a Nuffield mark will roll along with certainty and comfort. Wherever in this world man penetrates, roads will follow. Wherever there are roads, there you will find Nuffield cars.